Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. This is your DIY custom built ultra personalised and aesthetic epic, otherwise known as life. So let's write some mythical magnificence together so that you can live it up and soak it in differently to how you did yesterday. I don't know what I'm reading for. I'll shuffle some cards and know some more. That was so stunted. I don't know what the reading is. I'll take 3 and you can tell me. I know that didn't properly rhyme, guys, but I wasn't cut out for the military, what can I say? We're taking 4 because it gave us 4. Let me have a think once I've laid these out. Right. Instability. Okay. Something has been moving too slowly for you. There's something you wanted to happen, and there's been so much of a delay that it's actually become a kind of point of crisis for you, or it's caused a point of crisis, maybe caused somebody else to say, screw it, I'm throwing in the towel, which has led to a sustained kind of grief. I want to tap into the oracular though, because the benefit of this deck is the lovely visuals. I feel like with this 4 reversed, you were being a good little worker bee or a good little army ant, and that's sort of vaguely related to how I opened this reading, right? I feel like in some fashion you were towing the line with something. Now that may apply to a broader militaristic context for many of you, but if this is specific to a relationship or something like that and you saw the resonance there, I feel like you're annoyed because you had such good behaviour and something is not moving, no matter how much of a good boy, good girl you were. And I want to say that the Tower is both with you in terms of this not moving forward as quickly as it should have done. You know, be that career, love. This is a general reading, so we'll get into the nitty-gritty later, but it will be more loosey-goosey, and if you want specifics, please book with me. Yeah, this Tower is like, it's not progressing, and you're sort of going, hello, wait. This figure here is waving, right? And it's mirrored here. So for many, this is to do with another person, even if it's not a direct connection, right? This is, excuse me, sir, hello, still here. But I noticed also that this figure appears headless on both sides, if you take it to be a kind of feminine form anyway. You've been running around like a headless chicken after something. You've been putting all your effort into it, even if that effort has not been overt, I want to say. And there's a feeling like you're not even being seen. After all of this momentum from your end, you're receiving absolutely no momentum in return. There's no... It's not just that there's no reciprocation, it's not that kind of energy. It's more like there's no reward proportionate to the level of achievement that you've actually succeeded in gaining from this. And the grief about it, like it sort of seems to be dispersing. It's almost like you can feel yourself dissolving into the effort exerted to perpetuate a certain identity, even if the fruits of that identity are nowhere to be found in your life. So you feel a little bit, if you're seeing this, like you're just kind of dissolving into the atmosphere. You're just kind of dispersing into nothing. It's like, well, all of my focus has been this for so long that if it's not going to happen, who even am I? Sorry, I'm laughing because I identify with this, not because it's a funny situation. But it's this thing of like, it's not codependency from your end. And it's not even like, I feel like you're a strong person because of some of the symbols that are coming through, right? So this isn't that you would be nothing without this coming into fruition. It's more like you made your choices about where to put your energy and you focused in on this so resolutely, and I want to say with such resolution, with that double meaning of the word, that it's almost like pinpointed onto it and obscured everything else about you or about your life or about the way that things used to operate before this is where your energy went. And I don't think you can shake it off, because otherwise it wouldn't be a 5 of Cups thing, right? It may be that you recognise the lack of proportion here with what it is that you're getting out of a situation you put a lot into. But the recognition itself is kind of like, well, it's neither here nor there, is it? Because what can you do about it? These wanted to come together. What have we got? Four of Pentacles, reverse, a world. A Nine of Pentacles in reverse. So some of you didn't want to be single. Ace of Cups in reverse and a Two of Swords. Yeah, you're definitely feeling indecisive about the whole thing. It's like, do I give up? Do I carry on? Clearly what I was doing wasn't working, right? Clearly it was my whole world. But it's like this looks like an ear to me. So you're kind of listening to the response from whoever it is that should have noticed you. Again, it could be a professional setting. It could be relationship-wise. But you've kind of, it's not even ear to the ground. It's like you're cupping an ear in one hand. Like, wicked, I put everything out there. Let's listen for the sound of it coming back. And there's just this silence, crickets. I'm sorry, again, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. It's like, oh, goody, it should be about time for things to sort themselves out now. And then there's just this, tumbleweed noise. Four of Pentacles reversed is interesting. Because it's like you're not keeping all your resources to yourself in the way that... Like, the original part of this spread, it seemed to me like you were putting everything into this so much that you'd lost all sense of identity outside of it, right? But with this, it's not like you're isolating your efforts to that. With the expansive shape, it's more like you feel it seeping into everything else you're putting effort towards. So it's not that you've cancelled all the selves that you were outside of this situation. It's that you can be operating in a very day-to-day way outside of this situation. You can be enjoying the other things that you have and trying to sort of, quite rightly, energetically shake it off and go, fuck it, I'll do something else. And then when you do, somehow it creeps back round to this thing. Somehow it reminds you, or there's a point of advantage you would have socially or recreationally or something that would be boosted by this thing, or like the absence of it is felt wherever you are. It's reminding me, excuse me, I'm just checking the camera. There we go. Straighten up, right? You're having to self-monitor in situations that are not to do with this thing, almost because you feel like it relates to so many other aspects of your life, or your identity within it does, that you're like, no, straighten up, smarten up. I'm getting, like, again, two big scenarios, one of which is very militaristic, but it might be a metaphor. There's a sense that somebody who has had a military background is in other circles now, but the temptation to, smarten up your bed, shine your shoes, think in that very sort of tactical way is creeping in to those things. And it's like you can't get rid of the soldier self in some fashion. Again, could be a metaphor. And then for another group of you, because this is a general reading for a broad audience, there's a relationship that you've invested a fuck of a lot into. Excuse my language, but also it's the wrong channel if you don't like that. And whenever you try to turn away from it because that's the final point of manifesting it back in, or because that's kind of the only thing you can do with it at the moment, you're constantly reminded of this person synchronistically, right? You switch on a movie with your friend and the first person you see looks exactly like them, or there's like their favourite songs playing in the coffee shop in a certain scene or whatever. It's like you can expand all you want, but it's almost like your world is contracting back to meet you with this silence of like unresponsive, declined. And that's not meant to sound harsh from anything you're doing. But I think there's some kind of feedback happening where it's like, no, nobody's answering this call. You can't just do something else. It's very odd. Nine of Pentacles reverse could be that you don't want to be single. It can also be, if this is not a love reading for you, that this is kind of more broadly to do with how you assess yourself as a self-sufficient person or as somebody who is capable of self-supporting. again, with the military stuff, some of you, I'm hearing veterans and like how you relate your self-worth in proportion to what it is that you gave and or to your relationship to the state and the people around you and how they view what you did, and what you do now, sort of in the aftermath of all of this. There's some kind of self-assessment going on, in a literal sense for some, as in like self-employment, but for others it's like your relationship to love and money is coming under fire because of what you pushed in a certain direction that didn't flow back to you. It's like, the overall feeling of this reading is like you chucked out a boomerang and you're kind of waiting to hear it go towards you, right? But there's nothing. It's like you chucked a boomerang and it didn't come back. And now you're sort of going, shit. And quite rightly, I think your first response has been to put your attention into something different in order to figure it out, right? You get clarity by doing something completely unrelated. But what actually seems to be happening, and for some reason what's coming up as a message to you, is that everything is tied to this somehow. Everything relates back to it. And you kind of can't escape this feeling of dissolving into it or of it expanding into the rest of your universe. With the Ace of Cups here, there's some kind of fulfillment or emotional offering that has been denied to you. There is, I want to say there's a promise that's been broken, and whether that's by a particular pathway, you know, materially, financially, sort of in a vocational sense, or whether it's from somebody that you're in relationship to. It's like the stuff that was suggested to you as what would happen at the end of this, I don't even think it was suggested, actually. I think it was explicitly stated, but I don't think it's happening. And you're there kind of going, I don't know what more I can do, really. I don't know how I can get into a state of receiving or alter the kind of powers outside of my locus of control in order to receive back in what it was that was promised to me. And really promised, like in a sort of almost a sacred way, like an oath or something. Oath for oath might be relevant for some, but only if you're drawn to that. And then the Two of Swords is like, you're deciding between one thing and another, but they're kind of the same thing, right? You can be in a place where you feel indecision, but actually it's not a choice between column A or column B, because you only have column A or column A right now. Like, you cannot do more than you've done. That's what's being communicated. There is nothing more for you to do with this. It's kind of determined by forces outside of your control at the moment. And I hate to say that because I don't like deterministic tarot or tarot that sort of puts your fate in someone else's hands. I think overall it's a tool for reclaiming what it is that you do have control of and finding out a little bit more than the average person about how you can maneuver through that. But for this specific circumstance, whatever it is, it's like the only thing you can do is what you've been doing. So why is this coming through this? Why does this person need to know that that's what they can be doing? Strength in reverse. How can we take power back? That's what I want to know. Okay. There's a reframing going on there. Right. Can we clarify that 5? Okay, cool. So Strength reverse, Page of Swords reverse, 10 of Pentacles reverse, 5 of Pentacles and the Star. I'm going to just shove those up there for now. Firstly, you feel like all your strength has been drained out of you, which I think was very well articulated by the specific card sequence before, right? But more than that, I want you to be very careful of framing this as good or bad people, higher or lower impulses, having mastery of the self in some way. having integrity to an image that you wanted to present either to or via a certain organisation or group. Again, there's an atmosphere of self-blame in this, and I almost want to point you, if you haven't seen it, to well, it may not be out yet, I don't know when I'm releasing this actually, but I want to point you to the second one of my Holly Moon videos, where we're sort of talking about self-blame a little bit. You don't have the strength for this right now, and I am very much here for that and kind of with you. And if you want to talk about it, you know, do so in the comments or via my Etsy chat box, where I'm always kind of there for this kind of stuff. But I don't think there would be any point in Spirit sort of letting me know, oh, it's super drained, and that's it, right? I think there's also, I'm seeing like the original sort of symbol for strength, well, not the original, but the widely accepted Smith-Waite symbol is the woman taming the lion, and there's an infinity sign above both. And a lot of the stuff about that image makes me think of crests, you know, family crests, military crests, again with the military imagery. And this is sort of doing that for me a little bit as well, but it's in reverse. I think there's something about legacy or about your future or about thinking in the long term. And I'm hearing that Scott Pilgrim thing where he says, do you see a future with her? And he says with jetpacks, right? There's this very long-term planning based on things that were already set in stone or set into the symbol, or things that were representative of greater ideals. But the thing about crests is a lot of the symbology is lost on a lot of people these days, and or the momentum behind some of those ideas has sometimes expired within the modern world, or it's at least metamorphosed into something a little bit more adaptable to our times. What I'm saying in a roundabout way there is that I think you originally put energy into this because of the promise of a future that was based on assumptions that aren't necessarily applicable now, or the promises of an external person or force that were influenced by a system of understanding which is not yours, right? Or which you wouldn't agree with if you really examined it fully. So, yes, the promise is being broken, but I think part of why you're having this reiterated through this reading and why I'm experiencing frustration on your behalf is that you need to look at this crest, right? Whether it be the family crest for something that didn't become a family, or whether it be a kind of manifesto or set of purposes by a company or a person that realistically, now that you've experienced all of this effort, now that you've gone through the things, the trials to get there, and you're toward the end of that particular hero's journey, like, you might not agree with. And I want you to examine whether you do agree with them. You've clearly done your part here. And I don't think that this sense of dissolving into everything else is because, well, I don't think it's solely because you're not feeling the result. I think it's also because there's a disillusionment about what it was that you were fighting for or doing, or the way I'm hearing for some of you, you tried to present, and what that actually means about the world, about other people, whether it aligns with your personal value system right now. Like, who are you trying to be? And I don't mean that in an accusatory way. I just mean, examine what was promised to you if you changed yourself to keep up with this, and whether A, that's something you want anymore, and B, whether you're actually seeing the results of that, or whether you're just feeling frustrated because it might have been a false promise, it might have been false advertising, or in some way reflective of an outmoded understanding of the world that you have gone beyond. Strength is also a really spiritual card. I think there's something about your personal transformation that is extended beyond the reach of the people who gave you these values or promised you this thing. Even if that's just like one other person, think in a way, like in some facets of your life, you've kind of surpassed them. And this is why you're feeling really out of sorts and discombobulated in conforming to who it is that you think they would want. Because firstly, it's not you. And also, you're bigger than that, right? You can't fill that space without busting it open. So no wonder you feel kind of a bit dissolvey. I'm trying to think of a better word. Because it's like you've fit yourself inside a jar very admirably. But because you're bigger than it, there's like a ton of you flopping on the outside of it as well. It makes me think of like pictures of cats who've crawled into a fishbowl and there's like still a big chunk of cat ass that's like outside of it, just that you can't ever get in. Because this vessel was not designed for cat, even if cat is liquid, right? For some of you, that analogy will go straight over your head and you'll be like, fuck is she on about? But for others, that will illustrate the size of you in proportion to the fishbowl that you were given, right? Or the shape of you as well. Yes, you've managed to do this. Yes, you have absolutely given everything that you needed to a situation which has not yet, made a sound back to you. But also, you've outgrown it in the process. Page of Swords reversed is, Page of Swords for me is usually about spying, right? And we can sort of take this in a less specific social way to mean watching what other people are doing. I don't think that you feel fulfilled by doing that anymore. I think maybe in the early stages of this, you would look at, hiccups, confirmation. You would maybe look at like videos or images or have conversations with people who had gotten where it is that you felt you wanted to be. And you would take a great deal of inspiration from those lives, from those modes of being, from even for some of you like instructional stuff from those kind of mentor figures. Mentor may be a bit far because it sort of depends what the situation was as to whether this is like a true guide, right? But in some way you were looking at what other people were up to and deriving motivation, inspiration and practical structure from it. And I think that now you've outgrown that and that it becomes sort of an irritating exercise for you when you do it. Either because you go back to it and you feel it's unjust that they haven't had the same kind of reward, that they've had the reward, that you're seeking. Or because, again, like you've actually outgrown the paradigm of those people. So it's like no longer enough for you anyway. You kind of, if you did get it fall into your lap, you'd be like, right, and what? I've got a bigger job now. Or I've got this to think about. Or I actually don't agree with it anyway and I don't identify as being, branded like that. Understood like that. For some, I'm hearing you became a hero in a very literal sense. And it's no coincidence that you found a channel where I always say, hello, hero. But then there was no reward in it. There was no financial recuperation. Not recuperation, although that might be a thing. There was no financial... what's the word? There was no benefit in that sense at the end of it. And there was also not the wider claim that you were expecting. Or really a change of character in the sense that you were expecting it. But what did happen is that you evolved out of what your previous idea of heroism actually was. And you saw maybe the goods and evils of the world in a very different way to how you had been doing. A much more complex way. And that's why you're feeling all over the place now that your reward hasn't come in. And I don't mean that you were doing this for like the benefit of attention or acclaim or anything like that. I just get the feeling that like not only has your entire worldview shifted, but you're not getting the attention back for those things that people have given other people. And maybe that's partly because people with a different value system that you've sort of outgrown sense in you that your heart's not in this anymore, or that you actually believe it to be different. Or I get the feeling that like you've come back in all the accoutrements of heroism, or of, you know, for other scenarios, perfect girlfriend, boyfriend, or best friend, or, you know, person fit for promotion in whatever way. And like, you're wearing it, but it's like you're wearing a skin or something. It's just like not you. And people are looking at it with side eye, like, this is shifty. The thing I'm seeing now is the beginning of Men in Black, the first one, where that guy is literally, well, where that thing is literally wearing a guy, and it's so stretched over him and gross. Sorry for the imagery, but it is a kids' movie. It's so stretched out of all recognisable proportion that everyone around him, of course, would think that he's shifty. He's a weird shape and he's asking for sugar water. Like, what are they meant to think? And yet this alien entity, or whatever it is, sort of thinks that they've passed it off because they're wearing this other person. And I'm not saying that it's ungainly for you to be this way, or for you to... I'm not even saying that you've adopted somebody else's identity, because I'm not seeing copycat stuff in this, and I have done copycat readings, having been through a spate of that sort of thing myself. But it's not like that. It's not like you've reappropriated somebody else. It's like you've done the correct and advised things in order to cultivate that aspect of yourself, to bring forward that archetype within yourself, be that the hero or the lover or the perfect worker or whatever, in order to find out that it doesn't look right on you. There's so much more to you than that, and other people sense it. Ten of Pentacles in reverse is interesting as well, because it sort of harks back to this thing of legacy and what it is that you want to be, what it is that you want future generations to remember you as. I'm now thinking of a meme that I saw the other day featuring one of the guys in, I think it was Pet Sematary, that said something like, always remember that the outfit you're wearing today could be the ghost outfit if you die in it, right? So, a bit of a grim way of saying it, but it's like, dress well, because today could be eternity, right? It's a sort of much more grim, horrifying way of saying dress for success, I suppose. But it's almost like that, sort of echoing this Men in Black thing, in the sense that you've taken on a certain persona, or decided that you would go down a certain vocational path, or be a certain thing to a certain person. And you've made assumptions about how that will affect your reputation and the fate, I guess, of people around you and into the future. And for some of you, if you've not been in receipt of financial compensation for your hard work, there is a very literal translation of like, yeah, but they're not getting paid for this because you're not. And then for others, this is much more of a kind of ephemeral idea of, you thought that this was your legacy, but it doesn't even fit right? It's not the outfit you want to be buried in that metaphorical sense. And again, I'm sorry if my death metaphors rub you up the wrong way or anything. I speak in pop culture. It's the way this channel operates. It's no offence intended. With the Five of Pentacles, there's a feeling of excommunication or ostracization, usually from an organisation or an institution. With this appearing with the Star in reverse, I don't think it's actually about you being cast out from whatever it was that you were doing, be that a job or a group or even a relationship. I think the more accurate way to see this with its clarifier is that you just weren't treated any differently from anybody else. You just weren't acknowledged even. And that's shit. And I'm here to, partly to just sit with you for a minute in the idea that it's crap and that you didn't deserve that. Because there's clearly a lot of effort gone into this, whatever it is. But then the Star in the upright also is healing. And it's a very naked version of the self, right? We see the Aquarian water carrier in the card again in the Smith-Waite sort of semi-traditional deck. And they are bare, right? And they're pouring water to and from another body of water whilst being absolutely naked, which is a symbol for managing emotions in a way where you can be your legitimate self around others. There is no covering of the self, nor is there a concealing of what you might be feeling, particularly in relationship to your environment, because with that traditional star card, she's pouring back into the sort of oasis, right? I think your best bet is actually to start to be the self that you were before you began this, and to reintroduce it bit by bit. And I don't mean in this way that you've tried to sort of distract yourself before. I don't mean that you're reintroducing activities that you used to enjoy in that kind of a way, because you entered into those into the spirit of distraction. You sort of took your mind off it in order to bring your manifestation in, right? The release bit before you get the actual bit. Or perhaps if this was a more grounded situation, you were literally doing something else while waiting to get paid or waiting to get promoted or acknowledged in some other fashion. So again, in a way, even though you were doing something else, the focus was on eventually having that result. I think the reason you're seeing this reading today is an idea that you need to divorce yourself from the result and add who it is that you've kind of forced yourself to become through dedicated effort. Integrate that into your naked self, into the self that you always were, into the self that perhaps you feel on some kind of self-shaming level didn't deserve the accolades that everybody else was getting, or didn't deserve to be fairly paid for your work, or didn't deserve to be in that dream relationship. You are both. And there's a part of you that I think is not being accepted. And I'm not going to say that the delay in your circumstances is caused by that, because I want to be very careful there. Because with this ending, I'm not sure that the process of accepting and integrating these things is actually going to turn the situation around any faster. I think what's more likely to happen is that this Five of Pentacles that you fear, this sort of even more side-eye from the other people involved, or the other people in that particular paradigm that you've outgrown, it might get worse before it gets better. But when it does get better, it will be in integrity with your true self. And the parts of you that you've edited out or kind of learnt to behave better than, right, will reintroduce. And I actually think that the overall picture of you looks better and has more moral integrity, if that's what you were going after, as a result of being more complex and accepting the background that you were from, the physical appearance and indeed mobility I'm hearing for some of you that you legitimately have now, the financial situation that you're in, and the history of the relationships that you've had, without trying to present something to anybody else that sort of tells fibs about bits of that or focuses on the other things that you've done since in this overall effort, right? Sometimes when we do seek to be a hero, we seek to tell the heroic story. But an integral part of that, and what actually makes people identify with heroic characters all the more, is the origin story. I think you've tried to skip to the end, where you come back in that sort of Six of Wands kind of way, which I'm surprised isn't here. And you have the parade for the war hero, right? Again, metaphorical for many of you. But you've done that without the portion where they actually set off and they're a different person before they go. There's some lack of acknowledgement here that you were who you were. So even though you're in the space of who you are currently, and even though you've put in all this effort and all this work to be, I want to say, worthy of the circumstances that you desire, you can't actually have that worth without acknowledging the process that you went through and the origins of where you came from. But again, I don't want you to be focused on being adequately paid, or having a love confession, or having a words, come on brain, having like a reunion or reconciliation or immediate promotion or whatever it is as a result of doing this. I want you to do it so that you can be comfortable around everyone. So that you can actually not have to monitor yourself, not have to have hypervigilance, not have to address the right people as sir, not have to shine your shoes in the morning. So that you can just actually say, who I was before this was a good person overall. And who I am after this is also a solid person, right? But the interim is important. And whether that means that you will draw in more appreciation for that interim journey, I kind of don't know. And I almost don't want to find out for you, because that's not what it's about. If any of you identify as being twin flames, if you've researched the term adequately and you're kind of over your mid-20s, in terms of like it's a normal life stage to be having those kinds of growth relationships, even astrologically, I want you to, like, I think you already know, if you've looked into it enough, that your relationship to your twin flame is never really about them, it's about you. It's about stepping back into your own integrity. Yes, improving yourself externally always helps us to get into a good relationship. But the internal acknowledgement of who it was before you even started, and indeed who that person was probably drawn to, and the healing of that self, and the acceptance of it, more even than the healing, is what the twin flame path is about. You don't come into union without being able to look in the mirror without flinching. And if it's not a twin flame thing, or it's not a love thing, or whatever, there is this same thing of like, are you looking at yourself in the mirror in a way that makes you wince? But if somebody else came to you with the same life story, you would have compassion for them, or even admiration. You would potentially be watching them for inspiration, right? For some, because there's a lot of swordsiness, I'm hearing it would be good to take an inventory of the leaps that you've taken, of the steps that you've made between what you have framed as your sad little origins and your current self, because I don't think those origins are so sad. Or I think that if they were circumstantially fraught with things that you wanted to escape or do better than, that whole thing is still important to the unified self now. I know for some of you waiting on payment or a change in circumstance, this reading isn't bringing bread to your table, and I'm sorry for that. But I think actually if you're this far into this transmission, the point was hearing that it's not enough to put all that effort in if you're not going to see yourself as a full picture. I'm now, slight spoilers, but I'm now seeing the bit in Inland Empire where we get a very tense scene that I'm not going to give away, and then we zoom out and we realise we're on a set. There's a similar sequence in Bandersnatch, again, spoilers. But it's that thing, you've been so focused on what it is that you wanted to do, be, become. And yeah, okay, the rewards after that, but I think they were fairly secondary. But in doing that process, you've forgotten to zoom out to the wider picture beyond this event, right? And this is why everything else you do that isn't related is feeding back to it. It's not that this thing is integrated into all parts of your life and it's inescapable and terrible. It's that there is something missing about your understanding of it and your own experience is trying to reflect it back to you. It's trying to nudge you back to like, no, but who were you before? And where did you think you wanted to be? And how have you changed and grown out of that? And how does that put you in relationship to everyone around you? For many, many people viewing this reading, there is a social component which has been outgrown. And I want to say, check out my red-orange reading. I'll link down below which pile if I remember, but it's like a thing of, you did your best, you absolutely stepped into the self that you wanted to archetypally bring through by doing all of this. But the person that you had to kind of act like that around in a fake it till you make it way, or the people, sorry, are like, they've only got a bit of you. They've only seen one facet. And I feel like it'd be beneficial to be around people who see all of it. And if those people aren't in your life right now, the only way to draw them in is to be your naked self, is to be all of the different selves. Yes, you are the hero. Yes, you are the perfect waifu. Yes, you are the person who deserves the next promotion. But also, you are everything you were before you worked to be those things. And if you're going to have a good, solid set of friends, or even just one companion, they need to be aware of all of it. And they need to be accepting of all of it. The real rejection here is not from the community that you aimed to impress. It's you kind of turning away people that you could only be a half self with. If you can't fully be you because it's not safe, or because you will experience derision, or because you'll be actively held back from a situation as a result of expressing your true self, then my dude, the thing that you were after is not your path. Or at least not anymore. And it's wonderful that you got this far. And as a tricksterish person, I congratulate you on being able to step into a certain facet of yourself in order to get as far as you've come. But it's not the whole you. I want you to try and integrate the whole you. I think that's why you found this. I almost want to pull one more. Do I? Yeah, two more. Top two. Got the Queen of Cups in reverse and the Hierophant in reverse. No commitments at the minute, folks. Not until you've sorted this out. That's what I'm getting from this. This diffused feeling that we saw under here is still happening in the imagery of this card. And it's a card about commitment, conformity, bending the knee to a certain establishment or culture that is no longer suitable for you, right? I don't want you to do any of that, even if it's commitment to a person, even if they come in, right? Until you've figured out how you're going to be all of yourself in an honest, open way. And if that seems like a massive task, by the way, sometimes it's as simple as just like, I'm going to go for a day as an experiment without editing myself. And, you know, I was hearing chips fall where they may, but I was actually hearing fucks fall where they may, you know, like, it's just giving less of a crap about who it is that you're around and what they think about what it is that you're meant to be or do. Until that work is done, you're not ready to commit to anything, because I think you're going to be overwhelmed. Notice the text is at the top, right? Pushing down on this. Overwhelmed by obligation to establishment, culture, institution, even to like norms within relationships for some of you. That might be echoed with this stuff you've been watching or doing, right? You can't pave your own way if you're under the thumb or the hammer of something else. Excuse me, hiccups. And then the Queen of Cups in reverse. You don't have to necessarily communicate this to anybody, that this is what you're doing. You may not feel emotionally supported right now, and certainly you may not feel like you're in a beneficial enough place to emotionally express, and that is a hindrance. And I get that it's very difficult to be grappling with these things around people with potentially a very different value system, or with hopes for you that you would have discarded aspects of yourself in the past, whatever they are. there may be a feeling of being kind of pulled between different camps in that sense, where you've got maybe someone at home who has a different mindset to your friendship circle, who again have a different mindset to work or whatever. And it's like being pulled in different directions. And of course you're going to feel sad, right? The Queen of Cups in the upright would be this deeply emotional, transformational processing of this. And there is a sense that this can't come about at the moment. But again, I don't think that's because you can't heal. I think that's because you can only heal when you stop self-editing, you stop presenting as a certain thing, you stop even expecting to get a reward from it, because you're more readily stepping into the identity of, I was this thing, I was also always this thing. Take the whole package or leave the whole package. And if that seems like a risky move in a practical sense, I want you to know from personal experience that when you stop giving as much of a fuck about how people will judge what it is that you're passionate about, the right things come to you in miraculous ways. I've met people that I'd dreamed about since my teens and didn't think were a real person, and they've stood in front of me with like unique identifiers and markers of being a person from my head. And I've had vast sums of money come into me that I never thought I'd see, because I articulated aloud to a small group what I would do with that sum in the honest way that I'd been avoiding for years and years, right? I'd been planning it all, but I hadn't been true to myself and to my closest friends about wanting it. Sometimes receiving your desire is as simple as actually admitting that the things you used to want are not the same things that you want now, and that you feel entitled to be reimbursed for what it is that you've done, but you're also not going to take it in the direction that everyone expects. So I think until you're in that process of allowing the miraculous to come to you by actually accepting these differences between you and other people and between you and your former self, and kind of trying to heal all of that, until you've done that, you're not going to be able to emotionally express, either just like releasing it by yourself or releasing it to your friends, family, etc. And again, if this is relationship based, you're not going to be able to emote to somebody else in your life with the correct language, with an articulate or an eloquent sense of what it is that you're after, if you are not stood in your integrity. You're going to instead reflect back to them some of the facets of this thing of what you're supposed to do. And I think that you are more knowledgeable and experienced than me in many, many ways, and that you've lived a great deal of lives, right, in a short space, and that you have more to say than what is given to you in a script by every fucker else. So what is it that you want to say? I think the main message of this is to strip away some of the fears about how people will take it when you have a more complex view of things than they do. Or when your experiences offer more nuance to ideas that are very black and white. And I think that when you can be your true self, you'll be fine. Honestly. I know you don't believe me. I know you've been through a lot. I know you're frustrated with what's not come towards you, but you are going to be fine. You can come back and comment when you are. Save something in the comment section so you can return to this and be like, hey, turns out I was fine. Didn't believe you though. Because you are going to get the emotional healing. You're also going to be stood in your integrity without much effort every day. Editing the self takes a lot of fucking work, dudes. And, you know, it's sort of the reason that we might do this, and that we put on the formal gear and we say the right things, and maybe even some of us do a little bit of manipulative stuff, is that one day we will be in an advantageous enough position that we can let it all go and we can just be who we are. And that we can return to just kind of being kind and being truthful and expressing just as a vulnerable, normal human being, instead of this like hyperbot that you've been asked to present thus far. I want to say to some of you, you are not a fembot, you are not a Stepford wife, right? Or if the militaristic stuff hits, you are not a Greek hero. Or you might be, hit me up in the comments if you are. But, you know, you don't have to have these Herculean endeavours in order to express some kind of specialness and thoughtfulness to humanity. And I think that shedding the way you've got there to just be it is your next task. I hope that makes any kind of sense to you. Please hit me up in the comments if it did. Please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. Share with anyone that you think would benefit, or indeed someone who might deeply emotionally understand you. Be careful who you listen to at the moment. I think your instinct to stop spying on what other people are doing is absolutely correct. Instead, maybe take a trip down memory lane, both in the recent past and in your origin story. And maybe tell it as if you're telling somebody else about this particular archetype in a way that like honours what it is that you've tried to become, or that you've successfully become, I should say, but also honours how fucking tough it was to start from where you started from in order to get to that space. I would wish you good luck, but you don't need it. Take care.